Hi, this is Dan Devlin again for the Detective Dan Devlin Show, Honorable People, Honorable Nation. Today's program, I hope, will be interesting and valuable to you because I'm going to talk about, if I can get this out, I'm going to talk about an organization that you need to know something about. And we're going to provide an opportunity for you to become involved if you choose. You've heard me on other programming talk about the organization Oathkeepers. You know, like I take an oath, I do swear to do this or to do that. An oath keeper would be someone who honors their oath, and many of the individuals who belong to that organization are current and ex-law enforcement or military people, first responders as well, and like-minded people who will support us in our mission to honor our oath and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, I've been involved with that organization, and we've been trying to work for years to accomplish that goal of defending the Constitution. But I have some issues with a number of organizations, not just the National Oathkeeper Organization, because like many other areas, we often pick and choose the things that we will support and the things that we will not. When someone takes an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States, it doesn't mean that they will take the Second Amendment, for example, which says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now that's pretty specific and clear. But legislators, judges, members of Congress often twist and turn those words to suit their needs. And I'll remind people that most of the time when you have a nation that begins to abuse its people, they like to make sure, and think about it yourself, if you were in charge, you would not want those people to be able to defend themselves when you start to abuse them. That's why the Second Amendment exists. But the Second Amendment is not all that the Constitution of the United States has to deal with. You've heard me talk about the most fundamental principle, the principle that there are two groups named, and those two groups, are ourselves and our posterity is all our descendants until the end of time. That includes our unborn descendants, but yet we allow the destruction of our unborn descendants in the womb as I speak. Now, we're going to do something about that. But this program is about understanding what the organization, and really it's a church. It's the Church of God and Country Oathkeepers. And it's a church because we're not going to be afraid to speak about our spiritual views and our obligations towards the God that we believe in. As a fundamentalist Christian, as I've described before, which I really hold to the basics, love God with your whole heart, whole soul, whole mind, whole strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Scripture refers to that as the two great commandments And it's important to know who your neighbor is. It's also important to know who he is not. But those are the fundamentals, the basics of my religious principles. Many people don't have to accept my view on almost anything. They've lived their lives, and they have a right and an obligation to their God to obey what the commands are to them. And if they see them differently than I do, we can have a discussion about that. But I respect their right and their need, their obligation to go by the things that they believe. Now, I hope that they will always seek the truth. And it's vital to us doing what is right. I've always said it's not about what Dan Devlin wants. It's about what is right and just. And people have an obligation, if I'm wrong, to have enough respect for me that they need to introduce me to their view of what they believe the truth is. God and Country Oathkeepers is committed to honor our oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We have a lot of domestic enemies now. We have people who are lying about what the Constitution means, and they know what it means. And they know that they're not giving you the correct information because they want to reach a certain goal that means they want to control you. They want to see you helpless. They want to implement what they call laws to make sure that you don't have the ability to do what that Second Amendment was established to do, which is to make sure that the people who are in charge or we allow to serve as officials cannot abuse you. And even more importantly, cannot abuse your family. And cannot abuse members of the other group named in the Constitution alongside ourselves to have those blessings of liberty. And that group is our posterity, which includes our descendants in the womb, as you've heard me say. But in order to win, in order to gain control, they have to confuse you, they have to undermine you, they have to complicate issues to make it difficult for you to make sure that they obey the oath that they took to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. The fact of the matter is, the Constitution is a piece of paper with words on it that reflect the value and the principles upon which this nation was based. But we have the ability to change that Constitution. And if that occurs where it becomes in conflict with our religious principles, our beliefs that we must follow, in my opinion, a man is nothing if he chooses his country over his God. Wars have been fought because people on both sides wish to have others conform to their belief. Our nation was founded on the principle that people need to guide their own lives according to a set of principles that were agreed upon as a good foundation for a nation. The Declaration of Independence speaks about some of those. The Constitution itself acknowledges the rights of people to do certain things, but to mutually have respect for others, to understand that they too have these mutually agreed upon rights. When we say we have a right but those people do not, you have conflict waiting in the wings to raise its ugly head to help destroy the peace, the tranquility, the justice, the good works of people all over the country and the world. I've always believed, and at God and Country Oathkeepers, we will stress that an honorable society is built upon true respect for others. To treat others the way we wish to be treated. Now understand, that is stated from the perspective of an honorable individual, a righteous individual who is following certain principles. If you are actually following the Constitution and you're doing what that Constitution says you have a right to do, it simply acknowledges that you have this fundamental human right, of which you should know. You can go to one of my websites, FundamentalHumanRights.Org, and we speak about many of those fundamental human rights. Those fundamental human rights is regardless of what your politics are, regardless of your religious perspective, virtually all people agree on certain principles when it comes to others treating them in a certain way. There are likely very few, if any, people who want others to come for no reason at all and assault them, to punch them, kick them, stab them, shoot them. And you know that virtually everyone would agree they don't want that for themselves. And that's the kind of basic principles that virtually all people can agree to. That's why we have these fundamental principles and we have the laws that we have in our nation. But if they do not agree with the Constitution, if they don't recognize that we're a country that has a responsibility to defend its borders, to only allow those people in who we choose to allow in, rather than simply, as currently professed by many people from the Democrat Party, so-called progressives, to open the borders. Allow people to come in. We should be compassionate. But you'll see those people don't allow people to come into their house. Hypocrites are exposed when we care about the truth. We just did a program on Does the Truth Matter? And that's what the Church of God and Country Oathkeepers is about. The national organization that's just called Oathkeepers, I believe, has varied from that. They've decided to do certain things that they believe are necessary to do, and they're good works. And God bless them. And I wish them luck. But I think it's improper to call yourself an oath keeper when you won't do things like stand up and at least state that the Constitution names two groups of individuals. And as you've heard me say, and if you haven't heard it, the Constitution says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. And it goes on. And it gives the responsibility of everything that comes after to the people who are we the people of the United States. But it says who they're supposed to do things for, who they're supposed to include, who are included in the country, and who we are supposed to act in the interest of. And it says that its purpose is to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, which you've heard me say, as I've just said, those are our unborn descendants in the womb. And currently we allow their destruction through the procedure known as abortion. And we have governors and we have legislators in all different areas of government that are allowing this to happen. We, you and I, are allowing it to happen. In fact, we're often paying for it. This program is honorable people, honorable nation. You cannot be an honorable person if you recognize that the Constitution names a group of people, but yet does not require us to stop their brutal death. And so, God and Country Oathkeepers is based upon the principle that we have an obligation above all else to our God. Whatever your vision of God is, if He's about being a good God, doing things for our benefit, showing us examples, giving us opportunities to do what is right, if an individual, a spiritual being, often called Satan or the devil, if someone has a so-called church to that individual, these are not the people that we're talking about. We're interested in treating people as we want to be treated according to certain principles, and those principles are found in our religious documents, whatever your religion might be. Because I can work with people who have solid foundations. But you nor I can work with people who have a foundation that's always moving. It's okay in this situation. I was just at a couple meetings of political figures and they're saying, well, I'm not going to allow this. I'm not going to enforce this law. I'm going to enforce this law. Well, I don't believe it's right and I'm not going to. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to arrest these people. I'm not going to arrest those people. They shouldn't do this. They're basing what they do on something called discretion. They don't care about the law. They care about doing what they want to do and trying to manipulate the law in order to get the outcome that they want. I didn't bring it today and I don't recall it in its entirety, but I wrote the poem, A Firm Foundation. And it deals with that concept of how important that firm foundation is. Because when we're on shaky ground, how do we deal with that? We don't know whether it's going to pitch to the right or to the left, or to the right or the left, depending upon how you're viewing this. How do we know? We can't plan for it. But when we have a firm foundation, when we're built on something solid, that many people have had input and said, this is the reason we need to do this because this is honorable behavior. This is the way people want to be treated. But as I've said about rights, I will recognize no rights for any individual who will not support and defend the rights of innocent others to the same degree and extent they want others to defend those rights for them. People talk about God-given rights. I believe that God gives us the opportunity to do what is right. And rights, especially in a society that doesn't require you to even to acknowledge God, how do you get those people to agree that you have certain God-given rights? The reality is, as a practical nature, Rights only have power and effect if we mutually agree to respect those rights. God and Country Oathkeepers is based upon that. And anyone who has an issue with the Constitution, for example, they need to ask themselves, does it pass what I refer to as the first and final test for any action that a government or government officials do? And that means that it needs to examine the statement of purpose, which begins with "We the people of the United States." And in that small paragraph, we have the goals that are supposed to be the object of what we're trying to achieve. And we have specifically who is to benefit from the establishment of the Constitution and the nation. So, God and Country Oathkeepers is not affiliated with the National Oathkeeper Organization. And the biggest reason is they will not acknowledge, and this is not the membership. Many of the people in the membership have expressed anger at the fact that leadership will not acknowledge that our unborn descendants are named in the Constitution to be treated as ourselves. Now, they know that it's true, and I've had conversations with them, and they acknowledge that it's correct. But they just lack the courage to step forward and take that position. And I say God bless them, and we will work with them if need be on mutual issues that we're trying to pass. But I can't personally encourage anyone, and I can't follow directions from individuals who will not completely honor their oath to defend the Constitution. And so those of you who have been frustrated as I have, there's an opportunity for you to work with us, to see what we're about, and to understand that all people should be concerned about respect for others even more than for themselves. We can all take a little insult. We can all take a position that, okay, people do not understand me, completely, and so I can be patient with them. But when it comes to others, we need to have that level of respect that understands that they have a right to their view. And if their objective is to do as we should do as an honorable people and work together for those common goals which are expressed or acknowledged in the Constitution, then we need to make every effort possible to see where we see eye to eye and where we can work together, allowing for differences unless they're critical, of course. And we've come to that conclusion is that the idea that national oath keepers will not acknowledge openly their responsibility to the second group named in the Constitution to be treated exactly as ourselves is one of those critical issues. So they may change their position, and I hope they do. And at that point, we will work as closely together as humanly possible. But you need an avenue, you who have been fighting these fights, whether it's regarding the Second Amendment, whether it's regarding freedom of speech, whether it's regarding freedom of religion. And by the way, I point out that the reason we are a church is because people need to know that beyond the so-called rights granted by the Constitution, and our position is they're simply acknowledged by the Constitution, beyond that, we have an obligation to our God. And we need to fulfill all those obligations uniformly so that others understand our position. We should strive to encourage others to have dialogue with us so that they can see our position about their responsibilities and our responsibility to them. So you can go to a new website. In fact, we're creating it now. GodandCountryOathkeepers.org. And you can begin to see what we're building here. We can use your help. I've mentioned before that people need to step forward. We need men of courage and women who wish to join us in this fight. But I've always said that if men refuse to lead, we're doomed. Women cannot do this on their own. So we need courageous men, honorable men, to step forward and say, what can I do? And then we will discuss that. We'll find out what your talent, your ability is. And we will work with any organization that wants to achieve those same goals of actually honoring our oath to defend that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, but with the understanding that we respect their religious rights as well. And we're calling upon all officials to recognize our motivation because we're looking out for your interest. From a religious perspective, your soul may be on the line according to what you do. And we're going to do our part in order to encourage you to do what is right. This is an ongoing fight that we have all of our lives. I hope you're engaged in it. We will give you that opportunity at God and Country Oathkeepers. I hope you join with us in order to achieve those goals. God bless you all. I hope you all have a great day as usual. But I hope you make the commitment to stand and do what is right. Have a great day.